film is called Train Dreams. It's based on the beautiful novella by Dennis Johnson. It's a really small novella that somehow covers a person's entire life. This guy, Robert Grenier, lives in the early part of the 20th century in the Pacific Northwest and is a logger. And it just follows his life as the world kind of changes around him. It tries to make sense of his place in it. Our last film, Jockey, played here at Sundance, and Marissa McMahon and her producers they had the rights to the book and were trying to find somebody to make it, and saw Jockey and thought that we should do it. And so,
Well, the interesting thing is that Dennis Johnson is one of Clint's favorite all-time authors, and so when this project landed in his lap, it was almost like, do we touch this? Do you go into that legacy and start to try to bring it to life? And I had actually never read him, and so I came in like totally from the outside. And as I sort of opened that book for the first time, at first, honestly, I was just very intimidated. I was just like, how do we kind of rise to that occasion to try and channel the words of this author and translate it to the screen? But then you find it's sort of simple poetry, at the center of it, and how it tries to chase the ineffable feelings we like carry around us that, this character doesn't have the words for, but you feel it across his face and the experiences with his interactions with nature and with people. And as soon as I read it, I actually understood something more about my friend and why he loves this author so much. And it's been a gift to try and bring this to life and now be here.
Well, I had an interesting history with the novella as well. I came on board when these guys contacted me. It was, we got sort of halted by the strike, so it was going back a couple of years. But I had read the novella. It was gifted to me on the tail end of another film that I'd worked on. And I remember reading it and being similarly taken with the book enough to inquire about the rights myself, only to realise, like most things, somebody already has the rights. But enough as the filmmaker part of me was really curious about this being made into a film. As challenging as it is to turn any book, particularly something, as Clint points out, that spans a number of decades. So when these guys contacted me, it felt like some kind of strange kismet or fate. I remember thinking, does somebody know the inside of my brain enough to know that I was obsessed with this book? And it felt so awesome and strange that they were asking me to do that.
And you were like, I really hope it's not bad. The script.
Oh no, well, yeah, but the excellent thing also was quite often, there's so many components that need to come together before a film is even made. When you read a script, you hope that it's wonderful, and then that wonderful script, if it is wonderful, you hope that the person that's going to take charge of it is a wonderful director, which I know Clint was after watching Jockey, and that the team behind it were going to service that project in the right way. And all of those elements came together well. So it's very exciting to be here to finally kind of exhibit it, show it. My family lineage on my father's side were farmers and workers, and I have a real connection to that, even though that's not been my life. I know this sounds strange. I have a real connection to certain histories. I'm more comfortable going to set in wilderness than I am in an office, for example. And I think, knowing myself well enough as an actor by now, there is a certain aspect to me that I think really suits the character in this film. Since reading the book, the novella originally, I wasn't a father. And when it came my way via Clint and Greg, I was then a father with two children, similar age to the child that I have in the film. And my emotional connection to the novella was already pretty rich pre-being a father. And now that I was a father, it really struck me that there's stuff within it that really would mean facing some of my greatest fears, which I always think is a good reason to go to work.
The character that Joel plays in Grenier is such a tightrope walk of a character where you need to hit this needle hole of he's a man of few words but has big feelings, and a lot of things have to come across without being said. And similarly, Gladys was a similar tightrope of a character where 2 degrees that way or 2 degrees this way could really take it off course. And Joel and Felicity had known each other and had been looking for something to do for a while. And I've been a fan of hers since her first film, like a lot of us out there. And she just really took to it and found things about the character to make it even more deep and rich. And so, yeah, it came together quite quickly.
I imagine, and these guys will talk more to this, is the search for those places is quite challenging because a lot of those forests are gone, and finding the right environments to take us back in time. But for me, it was, I mean, I just had such a wonderful time being in those environments. But I mean, the challenges.
There were a lot of challenges, especially the more you're trying to do a film like this that's set in another time where you don't see modernity. It's really challenging, even in a place like Eastern Washington where it's relatively sparse. Trying to find a place that's untouched by people for the most part was really difficult. But it's such a gorgeous area. It's the area where the book is actually set, right next to the Idaho Panhandle. And so everything we were getting from nature and from these areas outweighed the difficulties of getting there. Being able to get out in nature like that, a big part of it was having Joel and our other actors be so game to not have a lot of the creature comforts that they're like normally given on a set, and just being out in the wilderness. And then I worked with the same cinematographer from Jockey and Adolfo Veloso, and he's able to strip the camera department down very small to where we can just be nimble and go out into the woods and get some things that we wouldn't normally be able to access.
And it's interesting. My memories, I wasn't really on this set, and so my memories were in the development process of the script, and the most distinct one was we actually, while we were writing, we went up to Bonners Ferry, Idaho, while it was set, and also the author Denis Johnson spent the end of his life living in a cabin with his wife on the same Moye River that's at a central piece of the actual writing, and we had a cabin on that same river, and we would drive around the woods listening to the audiobook of Train Dreams. And we also brought in a naturalist that told us the story of the land and how it evolved and the progression of this industrialization. And then we'd be in bars in town talking to loggers, and then we'd go out to their work sites and meet Kootenai people who would take us to their sturgeon farm and hold these little baby sturgeon in her hand. They were like looking at little dinosaurs, from the distant past. And it just kind of helped us find our own peace with the writing that we could then, I think, finally truly imbue it and take it where it was meant to go. And then when Clint and Joel were out shooting, I was out promoting Sing Sing at that time, and I was getting y'all's dailies, and I'd just be under my covers at night, just like transported to the world that you guys were creating. And it felt so beautiful because as big a scale of this is, it's the biggest project we've ever done. It still felt like Clint was making Jockey with Adolfo when we had a 10-person crew making that film, and that you guys were just, getting away with something, like running out into the woods with your camera and these actors. And yet at the very end of the shoot, I actually got to come out for a couple days and brought my son, who's got an interest in acting as well. And as soon as Joel learned, that was the first time I'd ever met Joel in person, he just took my son under his wing and like almost kept him for the rest of the day. He's like, okay, I got you, we'll see you later. And it just, to me, I was like, okay, you know who this man is, and why that he was so right for this project, and that you guys were sort of meant to work together, this collaboration. And so it was just a beautiful experience I had of like, on the page, being out in this world, and then being apart from it, and then coming at the very end and see the fruition of all this work.
It was a wonderful experience, and you say it's the biggest project you guys made, but there was the right amount of creative ingenuity and resourcefulness that was going on. We didn't have a massive crew. We didn't have everything that you would expect from a bigger film, and that somehow was not just necessary for what we were doing out there in the wilderness, but I think from where I come from in the background of filmmaking in Australia, it feels good to just have just the amount of people that you need, and to be able to move quickly, and to be able to run off and pick shots off that you don't need to move a whole, an entire village for. We felt like we had enough, but we always felt like there was an excitement about having to be resourceful.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.